Welcome to today's episode of the Jacksonville Jaguars Insider Podcast. My name is John Shipley. I am your host and beat reporter, and I have been your beat reporter covering the Jacksonville Jaguars for On SI every single day since August 2019, and we continue to move forward through yet another season together. As always, you can find our 100% free, 24/7, boots on the ground Jacksonville Jaguars content when you follow us on social media such as Facebook or Twitter at Jaguars on SI. You can also find us at www.si.com/NFL/Jaguars. All right, folks, welcome to today's episode of the Jacksonville Jaguars Insider Podcast. Today we are talking about the Jacksonville Jaguars and the impending return of starting safety Eric Murray. I think that just the possibility of getting Murray back within, at max, these next 3 weeks is a major positive for the Jaguars and their defense as they come down this playoff stretch. I mean, Murray missed the last 4 games, 3-1 in that stretch. And they are a 19-point blown lead away from being 4-0 in that stretch. I firmly believe that the Jaguars' defense has really improved in these last couple of weeks. I mean, since the fourth quarter of the Texans game, I'd say 11 of the last 12 quarters have been really strong, and they've been doing it not with limited resources or anything like that, but with guys who aren't penciled in starters. And everybody belongs in the league. Everybody in the NFL is a good player. Even J.J. McCarthy. Sorry, I had to get that one in. Everybody is a talented player and deserves to be there. But guys are starters for a reason. 9.9 times out of 10. The better guy is starting. That's just how it is. The more experienced guy is starting. And that's really what Murray brought to the Jaguars defense early on, I thought him and Jordan Lewis, what they were able to do for the Jaguars compared to where the secondary maybe had shortcomings in the previous season was the communication on the back end. And that's not just a coach speak thing. You know, when you talk about to the Jaguars, you know, about Eric Murray and Jordan Lewis and what veteran corners can do, they always say the communication. It can be talked about so much. I think people maybe understate how important it is. It was very limited last season in terms of quality communication. In terms of what the Jaguars have gotten from Murray this year, and he's at safety, I think he was having one of their better safety seasons in a while. I mean, Andre Cisco had a pretty good year in 2022. I think, though, that Murray was really playing solid for the Jaguars. And I will say, though, that with Murray off the field over this last month, you know, getting by, winning those games, going 3-1 in that stretch with backup safeties, backup cornerbacks in the game is impressive, no matter how you slice it, no matter who the wins come against. I mean, one of them came against a likely playoff team in the Chargers. And the Cardinals are not as bad as their record is. I mean, you saw kind of why their record is what it is. You know, it's not like they're like a woeful team. Like, arguably, the team the Jaguars are facing this weekend. They're just, you know, they've lost in a lot of high leverage, big moments. So I give the Jaguars a lot of credit for that. I give Antonio Johnson a lot of credit. The Raiders game, obviously, you know, some positive plays, some negative plays. Devon Hamilton saves him from potentially giving up the game-winning play. The Texans game wasn't his best game. I think, you know, he would tell you that. The last 2 games, Antonio Johnson's played really well. I mean, the Cardinals game might be the best game he's played. I mean, they're able to use him all over the formation. You know, he's athletic, physical guy, so they use him as a blitzer. You know, he looked good in coverage on the day. I believe, you know, even Trey McBride, there was one rep where he got the better of him. So I think the Jaguars have benefited, if you want to say that there's any plus side or benefit, from Eric Murray's absence in a sense because they've now seen Antonio Johnson in an extended role. And, like, is he suddenly Ed Reed? No. But I think that they probably feel better about if something happens and Johnson has to start or play meaningful snaps than they did at the start of the season when they just didn't know. Rayon Lane, I think, goes for him as well. Played his heaviest share of snaps on defense this past week. I think you can make the good argument, for him that it's done similar things. So ultimately, I think, the Jaguars obviously missed Murray a lot. There are some pluses, there are some minuses to what's had to happen since the shuffling at safety. But getting him back can only be a good thing. Some of the defense's best performances this year came with him on the field. And with the pass rush playing as well as it has the last 2 weeks, especially compared to, previous weeks, it's fair to say that, that even amplifies the impact of getting a guy like Murray back in the back end. So we will see when he officially comes back. Now, so fresher up on these, when a player gets designated to return from injured or reserve, that opens up his practice window. He can practice with the team, start to get worked back in, but he cannot play in a game until he is officially activated and taken off that list and put onto the active roster. And the Jaguars have until Saturday at 4 p.m. to do so. They did so with Brendan Strange this past weekend. Did so, really at the midnight hour, right at 4 o'clock. And Brenton actually missed his first game after being designated to return. Now, he was designated to return the week before as they were preparing for the Los Angeles Chargers. And I know a lot of fans would probably expect him to return that week. It definitely felt for sure, I'd say, at the start of the week, like, okay, this looks like the week. And I think as the week went on, after Thursday, I think it became more clear that, a little more time on Brendan. And then he comes back last week against the Arizona Cardinals and plays great. So, there is a chance that Eric Murray doesn't play this weekend against the Titans. Maybe he comes back next week against the Colts. He'd even be eligible to come back the next week. He has 21 days for them to bring him back to the roster. Now, what happens, though, is if it doesn't happen within 21 days, he gets reverted back to IR and he is out for the year. I've only seen that happen once. It's with Christian Braswell. I believe 2023. He got designated to return from IR, practiced for a few weeks, but never got activated. Finished the year in injured reserve. So I think, though, whatever the timeline looks like if you don't get Murray back this week, I think you feel okay with playing against the Tennessee Titans, obviously, with Antonio Johnson starting in the lineup. I don't think you feel bad about that. If you get Murray back this week, great. To me, though, the big week to want him back is next week against the Indianapolis Colts. And the Jaguars have to win this week to really raise the stakes, but I'll go as far as to say this will be the biggest Jaguars home game since the playoff game against the Chargers and the play-in game against the Tennessee Titans the week before that. Because that will be a genuine playoff-like atmosphere. You're maybe playing for the division, but they have to take care of business this week against the Titans. So that's first and foremost. But just the idea that they could be getting a guy like Eric Murray back in the lineup for such a big game against the Colts next week. Things starting to go Jaguars' way. We will see. We have 6 more weeks, obviously, to see how the Jaguars can find their way, what kind of path they carve out for themselves. It sure looks like it might be a playoff team. And if they are, they have fought and they have earned that and everything that comes with that. So we will certainly see, but getting Eric Murray back will obviously be a big piece. And again, this isn't to say they're getting an all-pro or anything like that, but he's a good player who's had a good season for them and, in my opinion, is their best safety on the entire 53-man roster. Thank you guys for listening to today's episode of the Jacksonville Jaguars Insider Podcast. My name is John Shipley. Be back next time.